welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call a police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
the struggle as to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
For staying with us at the top of the program this morning, I need to mention that we will be looking at something very topical, the idea that the federal government is now putting structures and systems in place to not only drive revenue, but to do so in ways that are very radical, disruptive, and then of course bring overall benefits to Nigeria by way of jacking up the revenue base of the country. As it is today, it's no brainer that Nigeria is in a place where it needs every kobo and every naira. Now, for context, look at how naira continues to weaken against the dollar. Look at how we continue to see a widening gap in infrastructure, how we're not able to fix basics in terms of healthcare, education, and even things that ordinarily Nigerians should take for granted. We've been told that a lot of money has been saved upon the removal of fuel subsidy payments. How or whether or not that has rubbed off on Nigerians in ways that are practical and measurable remains to be seen. In the meantime, however, government says, look, we need to continue to drive erosion. And one of the efforts government says it's putting in place is to ensure that expatriates also bring something significant, something tangible to the table. We are told that this is not a new idea in several other countries, including in Asia and across Europe. But people always argue that Nigeria is always a peculiar environment when it comes to driving certain ideas. And the discussion we're having on the show this morning, I'm joined by Professor Biodun Adeniyi of Bayes University. It's a pleasure always to have you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Uyi, for bringing me back.
So I want us to continue this conversation from where we left off the other time. You know, it's exciting when you hear that these are ideas driven in countries like China, Germany, and so on and so forth, but Nigeria is none of those countries. So let's talk about the peculiarities.
Yeah, there has to be peculiarities because nations are recognized, you know, by their different governance system. And the governance system that is in evidence in a particular country will shape the economic and political policy, particularly. And do not forget that in our kind of system, we're still evolving. And sometimes we're even torn between capitalism and socialism, if at all those systems of government, systems of economic administration are still in place. You know, sometimes we call it mixed, sometimes we call it integration. But what we want is progress, you know. But against that background would be why we need, you know, to be continuously creative, adopt the measures that are suitable for our system in the light of our peculiar challenges. And our peculiar challenge now is that, yes, we've been a monocultural economy over the years, solely dependent on oil, which is very, very volatile, very unpredictable. And of course, we've been saying over many years again that I want to diversify our economy such that solid minerals will be beneficial, steel will be beneficial, agriculture, which is also very important, will also be beneficial. But these look long-term measures that they've been mounting over the years and has not been realistic. And that's why, you know, when you are confronted with that kind of reality, then you begin to think about short-term measures. So what are the short-term measures that have been in evidence in many other countries? Will be how to include a lot more people into the contributory nets. I don't know how you want to call the contribution. Sometimes they call it differently, but at least people who will be obligated to the state in terms of remittances, you know. And beyond looking at that area, it's also to talk about portfolio investment. And what are portfolio investment? We're talking about momentary investment in liquidity that will increase the liquidity base of the system, ramp up consumption, trigger demand, you know, and once more enhance the multipliers, which will eventually lead to job creation, full employment, and help again in growing the GDP, projected by the present administration to get up to $1 trillion, at some point in the near future. So that's why we keep talking about the need to include the expatriates in the contributory net, away from the $2 million they're probably expected to pay, maybe on arrival in this country, as maybe as a fee, for them to be legitimate in the country. That might just be payments to be legitimate in the country, statutory payment that every other foreign national will pay on arrival in the country, in a particular country, or prior to arrival. But what about returns on earnings? What about remittances on earnings while in the country, away from the basic tax, that you and I pay, maybe personal income tax, company income tax, petroleum income profit tax, and all other taxes. And like government has said, or like I've been reading in newspapers, there's no clarity yet, really. But the good thing is that it is still about, engendering the government revenue base, from the soft angle, away from oil, and considering that the resources are declining, considering that we have a huge debt burden, and all income are presently being channeled to the administration of debt, on account of the economics of borrowing that we resorted to in the last 8 years, unfortunately.
Incidentally, that's the concern. You just said we don't have clarity as to what the policy is going to look like. My colleague would say it's a pressure cooker approach. It appears we're in a desperate place. So Nigeria is taking desperate measures. Does that also already say that we probably won't get this right?
No. I had in your introduction. By the way, that was an excellent introduction. And of course, I didn't see you using the teleprompter. You were obviously ad-libbing, and you got it right. That shows that you are an outstanding presenter. It's not all the time that you see it on set, So having said that, it's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's not the first time we're going to see that kind of measure. About 20 other countries are doing it, and of course, even if you go to some of these sophisticated Western societies, you pay through your nose, to eventually be able to live well in those countries, through your obligations. It can come in different ways, maybe levies, maybe taxes, maybe contributions, I don't know, but in different ways. You find that, yes, you get comfort at the end of the day. You see good roads, good health facilities, security is good, you are confident life is predictable, you are assured of your tomorrow, largely. And you probably may not even need to pray as much as you pray in some other countries with trying.
At least you don't have to pray the whole night.
No, you don't have to pray because you are assured of your tomorrow. The things that you pray for in a trying economy, they are already there in this developed country. That's why they don't pray as much as we pray. But if we get things right, do things appropriately, probably their disposition to prayer will be reduced, even though the Bible tells us that pray without ceasing. But of course, you pray for some better things, maybe for values and virtues, not for miracles to resolve in practical things that good work ethics, good policy directions, good implementation will enable you to achieve.
We understand that this is under the auspices of the Ministry of Interior, using its agency, the Nigerian Immigration Service. Of course, you have Ministry of Finance. I understand you also have the Ministry of Investments and
Trade and Investment, National Planning too.
Exactly. So it's a potpourri of agencies and ministries we're talking about. And what we have seen in the history of Nigeria has been, for the most part, these interagency kind of rivalry. So doesn't that already pose a threat given the trajectory?
It's not going to be enough reason for us not to embark on policy that are salutary. Interagency collaboration is something that is general, like that you find across the world. No agency can work alone. As a professor, I've been part of a resourcing team, talking to participants, facilitating training on the intricacies of interagency collaboration. And I do know sometimes it is not the fault of the agencies. It's not that they deliberately want to have conflict. It's just that when you allow questions around pride and prestige to come in, when you are too territorial, trying to be protective of your own territory, forgetting the bigger picture, then there's going to be a problem. But of course, now we know that we have a big problem, problem of of lack of resources, and of course, it is the reason why the overall leader driving the agencies or that have command, instruction, influence over all the agencies that will be participating will not have to rein in, letting them know that this is not about being territorial. It's about the bigger picture, the Nigerian picture, and of course, if you have that at the back of your mind, then you minimize conflict, to achieve result, no agency can do it alone. Ministry of, like you rightly said, Ministry of Interior is involved, Immigration Services is involved, National Planning Ministry is involved, Finance is involved. Then of course, there's a government agency in charge of PPP. I've forgotten the name now, CER or something. They have at their office in Area 11. They're probably also behind this. And of course, the citizens will also be interested. So it's a multi-stakeholder project, but of course, centrally driven by one agency with others, becoming interested. Like I said, the important thing is for them to realize that despite whatever it is, we have a president in place, and it is probably the vision, the mission of the president to get this achieved, because of the semi-hopeless situation that we're fast getting into.
What would tell people who probably have the misconception that this threatens jobs that are meant for Nigerian graduates?
No, it's not threatening them. It's not going to even create jobs, because you are trying to bring about a regulation, through enforcing some kind of contribution from the expatriates. So when you bring about regulation, some of them might actually think that they probably shouldn't be here, because there are so many jobs that they are doing that Nigerian citizens can do, Nigerian professionals can do. We've got quite a number of expertise in the Nigerian system. Do you know those days when we're doing economics at O levels, they will say, what are the reasons responsible for the underdevelopment of Nigeria? And of course, you see shortage of manpower. If you remember, shortage of manpower, all those kind of, we'll start listing it. That's an outdated factor, because we have enough resources in this country. The only problem is that they do not have opportunity to practice. We have many well-trained Nigerian pilots, who are doing something else.
Most of them practice abroad.
They practice abroad. Some of them are here, but they don't have planes to fly. And most of the cockpits are dominated by foreign professionals, foreign pilots. In a situation where we have even qualified Nigerians. For instance, I know one or two pilots who train in the best aviation schools in the world, in Florida, in the United Kingdom. But they are here in Florida and the other one in the United Kingdom. But they came and went for retraining again, and they keep retooling themselves. Flying is a very tricky one, so you need to continue to update yourself. And they were updating themselves in advance of getting a job, thinking that they will get a job. But eventually they didn't get it, and they had to go to other things. There are many of such cases with our professionals, engineers, etc., etc. And that's the point we're making, that if we have increased regulation, not in a way to disrespect the foreign professionals, not in a way to say that we do not appreciate their contribution, not also to say that they could exit, even where there are reasons for them to stay. I think a lot more Nigerians will get included into the job bracket.
We've seen the back and forth between the CBN and airline companies. In this country over the years, right from the days we had former President Buhari. Today we hear they have resolved it. Tomorrow we're back to fighting and so on and so forth. What was the fighting about? Inability to repatriate funds. Have we been able to clear that backlog, and have we been able to deal with the issues that got us stuck?
No, there are so many factors responsible for that. First, you look at the liquidity squeeze. If you're not earning income, how would you be liquid? How will you get the cash? When people have genuinely earned money in your country doing business, and they keep them in your banks, and they want to collect it, they cannot have it. Of course, they will exit, because nobody brings in capital without hoping to get some return on investment. That's right in business. And when you have a huge transnational company like Emirates investing heavily in this country, having flights from Lagos and Abuja, and with many Nigerians, going to Dubai every day on holiday, on medical reasons, on educational reasons, and for so many other reasons. You expect that the kind of cash that they are leaving behind is a lot. And by the time they want to get it, they cannot be obliged with their funds, genuine funds, illegal, legitimate funds. So you may not be able, we may not be able to put them down on account of their protestation or disavowal with the development, but what we need to do is to look inwards and say, what can we do to increase our liquidity such that we can meet their forex demand. And do not forget, Glaxo, GSK, one company, Glaxo SmithKline, yes. Just left Nigeria, just exited Nigeria. And there's another French company that also exited Nigeria, even recently. And that's on the back of many other foreign transnationals that left, Cadbury, Michelin. Some of them are not even living back to their mother countries, but they are living to sister African countries, because of problems of electricity, problem of insecurity, problem of inability to repatriate their funds, So these are compounding economic problems, that government has to be ingenious in solving. And one way to do it is just, of course, to find ways of triggering the multipliers, boost production, and enhance manufacturing, continue with the deliberate effort to diversify, stimulate the agricultural sector, which is also another important sector in this country, considering the avalanche of resources at our disposal. Then solid minerals, the Minister of Solid Minerals is lately becoming very, very dynamic and vibrant, and speaking to the issues and taking steps that will think and can help, make the sector very robust, considering the potentials we have in this sector. What about steel development? Over the years, we've been talking about Ajaokuta Steel Development. The other day, I told you that Ajaokuta Steel Company, I told you how magnificent that structure is. Imagine built over 30-something years ago, and yet it's looking moribund, wasted billions of dollars. No nation will allow that to happen. So if we have government thinking positively about these opportunities that are wasting away, then of course we can begin to imagine that we'll get out of our present quagmire. And that's what we expect President Tinubu to do. For me, I think in the realm of including expertise into the contributing net is one measure that is welcomed, in addition to his deliberate attempt, to woo foreign investors. Already maybe on paper, yes, but of course there's still hope in it, there's still promise in it. We've had that about 14 billion is coming in from India, about 5 to 6 billion is coming from Saudi Arabia. He's going to Germany to talk to them as well. Maybe at some point we'll begin to see the manifestations of or the fulfillment of some of these promises, if not in the long term, but maybe in the short term, in the area of portfolio investment.
Incidentally, on a very sad note, Nigeria is still grappling with so much with regards to power, electricity, and then you see the infrastructure, the decay, the gap in infrastructure. How do we drive, if you like, change the narrative, if we're bringing these expert rates into this country? These are people who, for the most part, have built capacity in critical sectors over the years. Then you bring them to a country where you can't guarantee them power. They can't travel by roads, maybe 50, 60 kilometers. Doesn't that pose a whole lot of challenge?
No, you see, sometimes investment is not about the presence of peace. It's very important for you to have peace before capital can come in. But there's the reason why an investor may want to invest in Somalia, in Afghanistan, for instance, even in war-torn Palestine. There's some kind of investment that you can go and do in those places.
In the face of conflict.
In the face of conflict, but we're not at those levels yet anyway. So I'm just saying that it's not all doom, as we might sometimes want to be tempted to see it. It's not all doom. There are still hope. There's a reason why some people, it's not all Nigeria, not all sections of Nigeria, all regions that's completely in crisis. There are marginal peace. There's marginal peace in some sections, and of course, you can take advantage of those sections. There is marginal peace in some sectors as well, you can take advantage of those sectors. And over the years, we have never had complete peace. Even in the Niger Delta, we have had the militants ravaging the place, but it has not completely driven away the oil majors. They are still there, making profit, doing business. So it's about courage and vision and the mission that you have, and the determination of the government to protect you as well. So yes, we know that we have to work on insecurity. Yes, we know that it is not all right. We also know that the optics are not nice, but it shouldn't stop us, from reinvesting our hope in the country, especially when you see that some huge multi-billion-dollar firms, are still thriving in this country. If not in the oil and gas sector, you find them in the construction sector. You find them in the manufacturing sector. And they're not doing badly. So many of these people have in their employ a lot of expatriates. Some of them are not even as skilled as you ordinarily expect them to be. They're just technicians. They are artisans, but they are brought in because
of practical skills.
Practical skills, yeah, with some skills. They are brought in because of the level of confidence that the employers think they have in them, much more than they will have in the average Nigerian equivalent. So how do we change the narrative? That's the discussion that is very, very important for us to focus on. The attitude of the Nigerian person to work. How do we change the attitudes? So that when you have the opportunity, you just put in your best. Such that your employer will have confidence in you and be able to invite you again, because he didn't just invite you to work on the basis of emotions or sentiments or because he likes your face. He has invited you because of the contribution he thinks you can make to the growth of his concern, so that it can be successful at the level of making profit and staying afloat.
The countries we just mentioned a while ago have actually implemented these kind of initiatives.
Yeah.
They are advanced on many fronts. Let's talk about data, because you need data to do some of these things. For example, Nigeria is a country where data doesn't seem to be taken seriously, even in the healthcare sector. As critical as the healthcare sector. So how do we also address the challenge of data?
It's another area that is very critical. Presently, we don't even know the number of our population. We rely most of the time on United Nations projections, and we are told now that we are slightly in excess of 200 million.
Sometimes we hit 206 million.
Yes, so it's a problem, no doubt, but again, we have to keep trying, keep looking at the figures that we have, working with them, and hoping that we'll get things right at the appropriate time. Recently, I heard that National Population Commission, was planning to do another census until it was postponed. It was to come immediately after the election, but because Nigerians were activity weary, government thought it right to put it on hold, and because of the humongous amount involved in a state where we don't have money. And of course, it was even put on hold after about 800 billion had been invested in it.
Almost $1 trillion.
Yeah, and that's the problem we're talking about, blocking leakages and waste. We just like to waste money. We waste more money than we actually use for the good of the people in this country. And when we're talking about waste, we're not talking about misapplication. We're also talking about misappropriation. Where people carry this money, put them in the private vaults in their homes, or move them abroad, and the money don't serve any economic purpose. But in the case of data, for expatriates, it's not very difficult to gather. Some of these people are phenotypically different from you. There are ways in which you can do it, and of course, some of them are not anyway. But projections say they're about 150,000 to 200. And of course, do not forget there's already a levy that they are paying. They are being registered by immigration services, and of course, many of them too wants to be seen as legal. They hardly want to run foul of the law, so it shouldn't be a problem for you to get their data and to make projections on how much you think that you can realize if you put them into the contribution net. And already projections are already saying that between 1.5 to $2 billion can be raised annually if you implement the program very well. And if government gets $1.5 to $2 billion annually, you can imagine how much that we contribute over the years to the budgeting process, and of course, how much it will help in alleviating or mitigating the quest or the need for about 3 trillion over 25 to 30 years, in the bids, to cover the gap in infrastructure that the nation is presently witnessing. We are presently infrastructurally deficient to the tune of about 3 trillion, and of course, no nation grows without infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about road, rail, sea, ICT, bridges, etc., etc. All these things are supposed to be in place to stimulate economic activities, engender confidence, and make life much more predictable. Fear will reduce. Economics is about the intangible. It's about building confidence, and that's why when economic projections are being made, people talk about ceteris paribus. If all things are equal, and if all things are not equal, you do not expect projections to be to materialize. And making things equal also includes, ensuring that the atmosphere is okay, and the atmosphere also includes infrastructural development.
Look at what happened with China. I mean, Chinese companies in Nigeria. We've heard about cases of exploitation and so on and so forth. We've even seen some of these Chinese executives being taken to Nigerian courts over allegations of exploitation. Closer to home, South African companies in Nigeria, we hear similar stories.
Yeah.
Is it like our system is so weak, everybody comes in here and exploits us?
Yeah, it also comes back to a weak mechanism for regulation. The laws are there, but they are simply implemented in the breach, and that's unfortunate. That's why you see that people do what they cannot do ordinarily in their country, they do it here. Just look at a simple example of traveling. By the time you land in Heathrow, you see the difference, Landing in Heathrow, approaching immigration, you see how people become all that. Everybody's on the queue, and who betide you if you want to jump the queue, I mean, you just organize yourself, that this place, the laws are going to be implemented. If you flout it, you get into trouble. But come back to Nigeria, get to the immigration, you see people trying to jump. Why they start abusing themselves because they know that, one thing or the other can get done, and you jump the queue, and people try to favor you because you're a big man or because they know you, nepotism start coming in. And that's why we also talk about new patrimonialism in a situation where our governance system is run not on the basis of merit, but on the basis of ethnicism, religiosity, regionalism, and such other mundane consideration. So the laws are important. Again, it will lead us to the question of institutional weaknesses. If the institutions are strong, and one institution that needs to be strong is the law, even as a virtual institution. If it is strong, working effectively, of course, we know that people will comply, because the human being does not actually wants to be free. He doesn't want to run into trouble. But of course, there's a weakness that people are exploiting. The argument has also been made about corruption. Nigeria is not corrupt because we are innately corrupt. Nigerians are corrupt because the system makes corruption possible. Some other countries too, the temptation is there, but the system, is restrictive. And that's why, again, it leads us to the argument that to deal with corruption in this country is not about preachments. It's not about sermonizing. It's about strengthening the institutions, to minimize the ability of the individual, to pervert or circumvent processes and procedures. We can continue to talk about this until tomorrow, because it's a fact out there that government has also tried through multinational agencies like the World Bank to develop reform agencies such that our laws will work. We have plenty of reform agencies, but to what extent will you say they have contributed to the reform exercise, to injecting value, virtue, cardinal objectives into the system? They are there, but again, you just begin to think that, the value they are adding is not commensurate with the desire and the investment, in the initially put into them, or that is continuously being the effort that is continuously being injected into them. And when I'm talking about this reform agency, I'm talking about the Bureau of Public Procurement, the ICPC, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, the EFCC, Economics and Financial Crimes Crime Commission. Many of them like that. The Code of Conduct Bureau.
Think that we have the Fiscal Responsibility
Fiscal Responsibility Act. So, to what extent, all these agencies they go through training, they know what their mandates are, but the system is really problematic, and that's why. If you read the book by Professor Ademola Adebo on corruption recently, he made the argument, which I agree with absolutely, that to deal with corruption in this country is not about this knee-jerk, episodic, once-in-a-while arrest of individuals. You arrest them, prosecute them, and sanction them. It's not the solution. You can continue with this ad infinitum, and the problem will still with us. The problem of corruption is actually systemic. It is endemic, The structures are innately corrupt. So you have to deal with the structure from the beginning, from the bottom. It's not a top-down approach, it's a bottom-up approach. And if you don't deal with it, just touching it at the top, you continuously be peppering the crack and not dealing with it substantially.
Incidentally, Prof, as we wind down now, with regards to these expatriates, idea that the federal government is now pushing, you realize there's a long-term element in it. We incidentally and sadly too, Nigeria is a country where after one government leaves office, the government that comes in doesn't seem to care so much about what projects or programs they were pursuing the whole time. What can we do at this, if you like, this stage where, this embryonic state where you can say, okay, in the next 10 years we are sure there's a guarantee that this project will continue to run?
If the project is let me tell you one thing, it's a secret, don't tell anybody.
Even though we're on live television.
It's here. One thing that every government is concerned about is public opinion. There's no government, even military governments, they are concerned about what the people are thinking. Hardly would you see, even the strongest man, so they are concerned about the public opinion. They want to ingratiate themselves to the people, to the citizens, as much as possible. But if a policy, is in tune with the desire of the people. If the people see that this policy is working and they receive it, and they salute the government because of it, no government will come afterwards and begin to think that it should scrap it. Most of the time, because that's why we say sometimes governments try to be politically correct or they play to the gallery. Even they take decisions not just because it is right, but because they also see it as right. And there are some wrong decisions that they might take, not because they do not know that it is wrong, but they do not have any other way to go other than just doing that wrong path.
Circumstances.
Peculiar circumstances. And that's why decision making, policy making can be very fluid. It's dependent on existing contemporary circumstances. So I do not see any government coming to say that they're going to do away with it, because of one reason or the other, especially if it gels with the people, and if it helps in generating income. We have had policies that were initiated by the government of President Olusegun Obasanjo, for instance, and of course they are still dirty today. Nobody will think about putting them away because they are good for the system. Even by President Yar'Adua as well, President Jonathan, President Buhari, if they are good, no government will touch it. But of course, I know your fear. I appreciate it because hardly do we realize in this part of the world that government is a continuum. We hardly realize it, and that's the tragedy of our situation. We politicize everything. And you see it more when there are hostile takeovers of government. When a government comes, that government is different from, the previous one with respect to political affiliation. He thinks that he wants to diminish the importance or the relevance of the previous policy before he or she came in. With an unfortunate development, we should learn to distance ourselves from policy directions, realizing that everything, most of the time, is couched, constructed in the interest of the citizens and its prosperity, sustainability of the nation.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, thank you for coming to talk to us about this issue.
My pleasure.
We're taking a quick break again, everyone. When we return, we'll just look at a few more headlines for you, and that will be a full cycle on the program. Just stay with us.
Welcome to Global Morning.